Ronald and Nancy Reagan's American Love Story told in Fox Nation special. Peggy Grande, former executive assistant to President Reagan, describes the unique love she witnessed firsthand in Ron and Nancy, a love story on Fox Nation. Ronald Reagan was the 40th President of the United States, taking office in 1981. The Tampico, Illinois, native was married to actress Jane Wyman from 1940 to 1949, according to History Online. Just 3 years later, on March 4, 1952, Ronald Reagan married Nancy Davis, making her Nancy Reagan, a future First Lady whom many Americans would come to respect and love, according to historians. Cit. Ronald and Nancy Reagan's marriage, in pictures. Nancy Davis and Ronald Reagan met in 1951 while Reagan was serving as the president of the Screen Actors Guild, according to History Online and other sources. At the time, Davis was working to clear her name from the McCarthy-era blacklist that was affecting many in Hollywood who were believed to support communism, notes History Online. Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, just married, cut their wedding cake following their marriage ceremony. Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, just married, cut their wedding cake following their marriage ceremony. Getty Images. Davis reached out to Reagan for help on the matter and they reportedly fell in love. On this day in history, February 6, 1911, Ronald Reagan is born in Illinois. Reagan proposed with a simple statement, "Let's get married," according to multiple reports. Within a year, the two were married in Los Angeles, California, at the Little Brown Church of the Valley in the San Fernando Valley, according to History Online. 7 months after the wedding, Nancy gave birth to their first child, a girl named Patricia, or Patty, for short. Shown above, Ronald and Nancy Reagan, their daughter Patty and their infant son, Ron Jr. Shown above, Ronald and Nancy Reagan, their daughter Patty and their infant son, Ron Jr. Hulton Archive/Getty Images. The couple would have one more child, Ronald Prescott Reagan, born in 1958, according to History Online. Ronald Reagan became the governor of California in 1967 and held the office for 8 years, that site notes. On this day in history, November 4, 1980, Ronald Reagan elected president, heralding morning again in America. On November 20, 1975, Gov. Reagan announced he would be running for President of the United States, according to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum. Let's get married. Gerald Ford, the incumbent president, ultimately ran as the Republican nominee and lost the 1976 election to Democrat Jimmy Carter. Ronald and Nancy Reagan waving in victory at Reagan's first inauguration as president on January 20, 1981. Ronald and Nancy Reagan waving in victory at Reagan's first inauguration as president on January 20, 1981. Corbis via Getty Images. On November 13, 1979, Reagan announced he would be running for president once again, this time winning the ballot overall. Once in the White House, the Reagans were regarded by many as a symbol of traditional American values, according to History Online. Their love story is something that is still talked about in today, with many saying they were perfect for each other. In June 2004, Nancy Reagan kissed the casket of her husband, former President Ronald Reagan. In June 2004, Nancy Reagan kissed the casket of her husband, former President Ronald Reagan. AP photos/Elise Amendola. In 2000, Nancy published love letters the couple had written to one another, titling the book, "I Love You, Ronnie." President Reagan died from Alzheimer's disease in 2004 at the age of 93, says History Online, while Nancy died in 2016 of congestive heart failure at the age of 94, according to the ReaganLibrary.gov. Ronald Reagan Republican National Convention Acceptance Speech 1984 video.